Hi there, I'm Anselma. I found out my dad left $2 million to my sister in his will, and I got nothing. No explanation, no warning, just erased. But the truth? That was just the beginning. They drained my bank accounts, used my name for loans, spread lies behind my back, and when I finally stood up for myself, they said I was the problem. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a pattern, one that had been building quietly for years. What would you do if the people who raised you turned you into a stranger in your own story? Would you stay quiet, or would you fight back? Let's talk about it. The paper didn't even look important at first, just another envelope in a messy pile of tax forms, warranties, and junk mail. I'd come over to help my dad sort through it all, like I always did every October. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon in Fort Collins, the kind of day that makes the trees look like they're on fire with gold and rust. My parents' house, warm and cluttered with memories, smelled like old candles and cinnamon. Familiar, harmless. I wasn't expecting to be blindsided. While I was flipping through the stack, looking for property tax documents, I saw the title, Last Will and Testament. For a moment, I froze, because wills aren't something you just stumble across like takeout menus. I opened it without thinking, curiosity outweighing etiquette. It took 3 lines to stop my breath. Everything, every last dollar, every inch of the house, every piece of my parents' assets was going to Verlies. Not one word about me, not a single acknowledgement of the years I helped them pay that mortgage when Dad's back went out, or the groceries I delivered after Mom's surgery, or the late-night phone calls I answered, walking them through online banking. Nothing. I kept reading, thinking maybe I missed a page. There had to be a mention, some token of appreciation, but no, just a single generic sentence near the end. We leave this with equal love for both our daughters. Equal love? I felt like a damn fool. I set the will aside without reacting. Dad came back into the room a few minutes later, sipping from his mug, and asked, "Find the tax doc?" "Not yet," I said, smiling so tight it felt like my face might crack. It wasn't the moment to blow up. I needed to process this quietly first, and maybe part of me still hoped there was a reasonable explanation. A mistake. Something that would make sense when I wasn't sitting there with betrayal tangled around my ribs like barbed wire. But 2 days later, the second blow landed. My phone rang while I was reviewing a client's retirement plan at the office. It was Mom. "Hi, honey," she cooed. "Listen, we've hit a little snag this month. Would you be able to send us $1,500 just to cover the utility bills and a couple other things?" I hesitated for all of 2 seconds before saying, "Yeah, of course." I transferred the money during my lunch break. It wasn't unusual. They'd asked before and I always came through. But that night, while I was half watching a crime doc on Netflix and scrolling through Instagram, I saw Verlies' story. She was at La Mer, that overpriced spa up near Boulder. Robes, wine, massage oils, soft lighting, and the caption, "Self-care is the best care pre-holiday reset." My stomach turned. I tapped through more photos. Sushi, champagne, candles. So that's where the utility bills went. At first, I told myself I must be wrong. Coincidence, timing. But I knew better. I knew what this was. They weren't just ignoring me, they were using me. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, I sat with it. I sat with the weight of what I now understood. That I was the reliable one, the useful one, not the loved one. That night I drove home in silence. The sky was already dark by 6, and the cold was starting to bite through my coat. Inside my apartment, I poured myself a glass of wine and curled up on the couch. Across from me, on the bookshelf, was a photo of me and Verlies as kids, matching dresses, arms around each other. The glass frame had a tiny crack in the top corner. I'd meant to fix it. Now I just stared at it, and for the first time, I let myself feel it. This wasn't about money. It never was. This was about being erased. It had been 3 days since I read the will, since the spa photos, since the reality hit like a slap in the face. I hadn't said anything to anyone, not a single word to my parents, not even to Verlies. I went to work. I smiled at clients. I returned emails. I even laughed when my coworker Trina made some joke about her chaotic Thanksgiving plans. But every laugh, every smile, every nod, it was all muscle memory. Inside, I was unraveling in silence. It was a rainy Wednesday evening when my father called. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, still in my work clothes, nursing a cup of lukewarm tea I'd forgotten about. The window beside me blurred with soft droplets, and the light in my room was dim, muted, like the rest of me. "Hi, Dad," I answered, my voice more flat than I intended. He didn't ask how I was. No chit-chat. He got right to it. "About what you saw last weekend." His voice was too even, too rehearsed. "It's more complicated than you think." I didn't respond. I waited. "Your mother and we thought it was best. Verlies, she's had a harder time. You've always been strong. Independent?" There it was, the narrative, the same old script. "You're stable," he continued. "She's not. You don't need it like she does." I pressed the phone tighter against my ear. My jaw locked so hard it hurt. I closed my eyes and felt a thud behind them, the ache of restraint. "That's your justification?" I asked, voice calm, too calm. "It's not about love, Anselma. You know we love you." I almost laughed, but it would have come out wrong, too bitter, too broken. "We're done here," I said softly, and hung up. I didn't cry, I didn't throw the phone. I just sat there letting the words settle in like wet cement. Not needed. Not deserving. Not included. I'd been demoted from daughter to utility. Reliable, silent, and ultimately replaceable. Later that night, I pulled out an old shoebox from my closet. Inside were scrapbooks and birthday cards, old letters, silly notes from middle school. I flipped through the pages slowly, my fingers tracing the edges of memories that now felt artificial. One photo stood out. Verlies crying after losing a 6th grade spelling bee. I remembered that day. I'd placed second. Dad had told me to let her win, just this once. She was sensitive, and I was mature enough to understand. I had nodded. I always nodded. In high school, I got into the state honors program. At the celebration dinner, all the attention went to Verlies getting a C+ in Algebra 2. "She worked so hard," Mom gushed. No one even mentioned my name. And still, I believed I was lucky to be seen as the strong one. I wore that label like a medal, thinking it meant they respected me. Turns out it meant they felt they could take me for granted. The next evening, just as I was making dinner, my phone buzzed with a call from Claire, my cousin. She rarely called. We mostly exchanged birthday texts and heart reacts on Facebook posts. I answered with polite curiosity. "Hey," she said hesitantly. "I was just checking in. Heard things got weird at your parents' house." "Weird?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Yeah, well, my mom mentioned something about the will. I didn't want to pry, but Uncle Cadrian always used to say you were doing fine on your own. That Verlisa needed more help." I paused, spatula still in hand. "So he's been saying that for a while, huh?" Claire exhaled slowly. "Honestly? Yeah, I think they meant well, but—" There was no but that would fix it. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd deliberately chosen not to include me. They weren't confused. They weren't misguided. They agreed. I finished cooking, plated the pasta, and left it on the counter. I didn't eat. I wasn't hungry anymore. That night, I stood in front of the gallery wall in my hallway, the one with a dozen framed photos of family vacations, birthdays, holidays. I stared at the picture of my parents and me at Niagara Falls. Then I took it down. One by one, I removed every photo that had their faces in it. I didn't burn them. I didn't shred them. I just put them in a box and slid it under my bed. I wanted space. I wanted air. I wanted something that didn't echo their voices every time I looked at it. I picked up my journal. The pages smelled faintly of lavender from a sachet I tucked between them months ago. I opened to a clean page and wrote, "What do you call a family that never actually saw you?" A week passed, but nothing really changed. At least, not on the outside. I still went to work. I still replied to emails. I still smiled at the receptionist in the elevator. But I felt like a guest in my own body, like someone else had stepped into my skin and forgotten how to move around in it. It was a Sunday morning when I opened Instagram out of habit. I was sipping coffee by the window, watching the sun push through the clouds without warming anything, bright but cold, like a spotlight on something I didn't want to see. Verlice had posted a new photo. Throwback with my rock, my everything, dad goals. It was her and my father, arm in arm, both smiling in front of the lake near Estes Park. The colors had been filtered, softened, like some perfect Hallmark moment. But something felt off. It took me a second, and then I saw it. There was space behind Dad's shoulder, an awkward crop on the left side of the image. A strange floating edge of light that didn't belong. I knew that photo. I had it too. I pulled out my old backup drive and connected it to my laptop. The folder labeled Family Photos hadn't been touched in months. When I found the original file, I clicked it open. There I was, standing on the other side of Dad, smiling like I belonged. The original photo had 3 people. The one she posted had 2. They'd cut me out, not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally, cropped, removed, erased. I stared at the screen, hands frozen on the keyboard, coffee cooling beside me. For a long time, I didn't move. I just stared at the difference between truth and narrative. And then I laughed. A low, stunned laugh that didn't reach my chest. Later that day, I opened a different folder. Milestones. Graduation, promotions, birthdays. I scanned through the images, looking for patterns I'd never noticed before. And I saw them. Dozens of them. Photos where I stood just out of frame, where eyes looked past me, where conversations swirled around me like I was decoration, not blood. I remembered my college graduation, how I'd won a full ride to an Ivy League, and how at the family dinner, all anyone talked about was Verlice landing her first job interview. Not the job, the interview. "You're the strong one," Mom had said that night. "You don't need the spotlight. You shine on your own." At the time it felt like love. Now it sounded like dismissal. Like she was saying, "Don't expect anything. You already give too much." I opened a drawer and found one of the photo albums from when we were kids. Inside, a picture of the 4 of us at the Grand Canyon. Everyone smiling. But now I noticed, Dad's arm was around Verlice, not me. Mom's hand rested on her shoulder. I stood next to them, smiling just the same, but not touched, not claimed. Maybe it had always been this way. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. By late afternoon, the sun had dipped lower behind the apartment buildings, and I sat at my desk, flipping through those photos over and over, looking for something I'd missed, hoping for one image where I felt chosen. I didn't find one. Instead, I opened my email, not to send anything, just to type. Subject: when you erased me. I stared at the blinking cursor for several minutes before I started writing. I didn't know if I'd ever send it. That didn't matter. I just needed the words to exist somewhere outside my body, because now I knew they weren't just choosing her. They were rewriting a family without me in it. Wednesday came with drizzle and bone-deep cold. I wrapped my scarf tighter as I walked through the parking structure and into my office building. Our floor smelled like burnt coffee and fluorescent lights. I liked the routine here. Numbers didn't play favorites, forecasts didn't pretend, spreadsheets didn't crop you out of memories. I was halfway through reviewing a client's portfolio, 2 monitors glowing in front of me, my attention zoned in, when the internal line rang. I rarely got calls on that one. I paused, pressed the speaker button. "Anselma?" It was Lainey at reception. Her voice trembled. "Your family's here. They say it's urgent." I sat still for a beat, the word family rattling in my ribs. "Did they say why?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "They wouldn't say, but they won't leave." My hand hovered over the mouse for a moment. Then I stood. "I'll come down." As I descended in the elevator, my reflection in the mirrored walls looked calm, unbothered. But inside, my stomach curled into knots. They weren't supposed to come here. This was my space. Professional, clean, untouched by the mess I'd left in my personal life. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and there they were. Dad, arms crossed, face tight with expectation. Mom in her familiar beige coat and faux sympathetic smile. And Verlice, of course. Perfect hair, perfect posture, eyes scanning the room like she was the guest of honor. They stood in a line, like some kind of intervention. I approached slowly. They turned in unison. "You can't ignore us forever," Dad said first, skipping any pretense of affection. Mom's voice was soft, like she was trying to soothe a wild animal. "Sweetheart, we just want to talk. Don't make this bigger than it is." I took a breath, steady but low. "You already made it bigger," I said, eyes locked on her. "When you decided I wasn't your daughter anymore." There was a flicker behind her eyes. Discomfort? Guilt? Hard to say. She adjusted her scarf and looked at Dad, who didn't flinch. "You're being dramatic," Verlies finally chimed in. "It's just a will. You act like it's some kind of betrayal." I laughed, sharp, humorless. "You don't get to rewrite the narrative just because you're comfortable in it." "I didn't ask for anything," she muttered. "No," I replied. "You just took it when it was offered." I turned and walked away, not giving them the drama they came for. Back at my desk, I closed the blinds, sat down, and tried to pretend it was just another afternoon. I managed maybe 10 minutes of focus before the alert pinged on my phone. "Your account ending in **38 has been debited $2,500. My breath caught. I opened the banking app, heart racing. The transaction came from the joint account I had set up for Mom years ago, back when she struggled to manage her medical bills. I'd forgotten it even existed. I scrolled. It was a wire transfer to an upscale event venue. I called the bank immediately. The customer service rep was kind, but the response was clinical. "Unfortunately, since she's a legal co-holder, the transaction is authorized." I hung up slowly, my hands cold despite the heat in the room. That money wasn't just stolen, it was assumed. Taken like it still belonged to them. They'd shown up in my workplace, demanded a conversation, and then, behind my back, reached into my pocket. I opened the group chat we hadn't used in half a year. Their names stared back at me in the top bar: Kadrian, Sorrel, Verlies. I typed slowly, deliberately. "This is the last time you take anything from me without my consent," and I hit send. 2 days later, I was in the kitchen making tea when my phone rang. Unknown number, local area code, but not familiar. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was spam, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Is this Anselma Elmore?" "Yes, speaking." "This is Samantha from Equifax Fraud and Identity Services. We're calling to verify a recent co-signature on a personal line of credit, $12,000, issued last week under your name." The words barely registered at first. Then they hit. "I didn't co-sign anything," I said. A brief pause, followed by quiet typing on the other end. "The application listed your full name and an older residential address. The secondary signer is Sorrel Elmore." My grip tightened on the counter. Steam rose steadily from the kettle behind me. "That's my mother." "I see," she replied, her tone shifting. "So you're not authorizing this transaction?" "No, absolutely not. That's identity fraud." "We'll open an investigation and email you the formal dispute documents," she said. "But please note, because the signer is a known relative and may have had access to previous records, this could be a lengthy process." "Understood," I muttered, already feeling the ground tilt beneath me. I ended the call and just sat down, staring at nothing. 5 full minutes passed before I could even move. The betrayal didn't just sting, it stunned. She hadn't just stepped over a line, she'd crushed it. No text this time, no carefully worded message. I called her. My hands were shaking slightly as the phone rang. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Her voice was soft, light, like she'd been waiting for me. "Sweetheart," she said, like nothing had happened. "I thought you might call." "You used my name to apply for a loan," I said evenly. "You didn't just cross a line. You buried it." She sighed, but didn't deny it. "We needed it. Things are tight right now, and you wouldn't have said yes." "No, I wouldn't have," I snapped, "because it's my name, my credit, my identity. You forged it." "It's not forgery, it's family. Families help each other." "No, families ask, families respect, they don't steal." And I hung up. I didn't yell, didn't cry. I just sat there alone in my kitchen, letting the silence harden around me. If I'd had any illusions left, they ended there. An hour later, my phone lit up again. A text from Verlies. "You're seriously doing all this over a will? Grow up." Then a group message from Mom. "We've done so much for you. This is how you repay us?" No message from Dad, just a reaction on her text. Of course, no guilt, no shame, just deflection. They weren't hiding anymore. They saw themselves as victims. I was the villain for pushing back, for setting limits, for finally saying no. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened Facebook. My page had been quiet for years. Some old work photos, the occasional birthday post, a few likes here and there. But that night, I wrote something real. No accusations, no drama, just facts. For years I gave to my family. I paid for things, kept quiet, and told myself it was love. I ignored the imbalance. I convinced myself that loyalty meant silence. Recently, I found out I was removed from the family will, without discussion or explanation, just gone. Then I discovered a loan taken out in my name, without my permission, co-signed by someone I trusted. I've stayed quiet long enough. They haven't. So here's where I stand. I wasn't just written out of the will, I was written out of the family long before. And I hit post. No name-calling, no revenge, just truth. I didn't check for likes, didn't scroll to see who saw it. That wasn't the point. The point was, I had spoken. Let the truth breathe. Let it live where silence used to be. I was at work early that day. The coffee was burnt, my eyes were heavy, and for once my mind was quiet. Not peaceful, just suspended. I hadn't posted anything since the Facebook fallout. No response from Dad. Verlisa vanished. But the silence didn't feel like a break. It felt like pressure, like something was winding up behind the scenes. Around midday, an email popped into my inbox. Reception. You have a letter, hand-delivered, from the law offices of Henry and Clark, signed and sealed. I froze. My chest tightened. I left my desk and headed downstairs. Lainey handed me the envelope with a cautious look, the kind you give someone when you know it's bad but can't say so out loud. The letterhead told me everything. Back at my desk, I sat down, stared at the thick envelope for a second, then opened it. 3 pages. Heavy, glossy paper. The tone was cold, precise. You are being formally warned against sharing private family information with malicious intent on public platforms. The client? Sorrel Elmore, my mother. I read that line again. She hadn't called, hadn't written. No apology, no explanation, just lawyers. Threats, paper over pain. She wasn't trying to speak to me. She wanted to silence me. They weren't negotiating. They were drawing a line. I read the entire thing, slowly, twice. I didn't flinch. I just pulled out the office scanner, fed in the pages, and saved the files in a folder labeled Defense. No reply, no panic, just evidence. That night, I sat by the window with a glass of water. Snow was falling hard now, dancing under the orange glow of the street lamps. The city felt distant, wrapped in hush. I was drained, but sharp. The fog was gone. Then my phone lit up. A message from Nina, an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in months. Hey, did you actually say those things about your mom on that call? My stomach dropped. What call? I texted back. She replied with an audio file. I hesitated, then hit play. My voice, but wrong, off. Clipped sentences, choppy edits. The rhythm was weird, the tone mismatched. A manipulative liar who doesn't deserve the title of mother. I never said that, ever. The call was a Frankenstein version of something real. Our last conversation. Chopped up and rearranged. It was me, but not me. Someone had stitched together a character assassination. I messaged her back immediately. That's fake, badly edited. I have the full call saved, start to finish. Nina didn't answer right away. I could picture her staring at her phone, caught between what she heard and what she knew. That's what they were counting on. Doubt. Confusion. They didn't need to prove I was a liar. Just enough to make me look unstable. I pulled up the files. Audio backups of everything. The full call with Mom. The one with Verlise. I had them all. Documented, date-stamped, saved for reasons just like this. In the quiet, I opened a new doc and started writing a timeline. From the will, to the account transfers, to the gaslighting, to this. Every twist, every threat, every trap. I added receipts, screenshots, dates. I opened folders, labeled everything, cross-referenced timestamps, built the scaffolding of a truth they didn't want seen. Outside, the snow had coated the fire escape, thick and undisturbed. They thought sending lawyers would scare me. They thought splicing my voice would break me. They were wrong. I wasn't going to panic. I wasn't going to yell into the void. I was going to build a case. They called me dangerous for telling the truth. Wait until they saw what I could do with proof. My apartment windows were fogged from the inside, blurred by the condensation that came from days of refusing to open them. The radiator hummed, but the chill had settled beneath my skin and into the soft tissue of my patience. It was the kind of cold that didn't just touch you, it stayed. I was stirring oatmeal mindlessly when I saw the notification pop up on my phone. A neighbor I barely knew had sent a screenshot. No caption, just the image. Fort Collins Family Circle public post. When a daughter turns on her own mother for a few dollars, shameful. My stomach didn't drop, it locked. The first comment? Mrs. Kenna, one of Mom's longtime church friends. She'd braided my hair for a bake sale when I was 9. I raised 3 girls. None of them would ever disrespect me like that. Prayers to Sorrel. And then, the one that should have surprised me, but still felt like a slap. Verlice. No matter what, I'll always choose love over greed. I froze mid-bite. The oatmeal turned cold in my bowl. It wasn't just the words that hit, it was what came after, or rather, what didn't. The people who had quietly liked my Facebook post 2 weeks ago, the ones who'd messaged me in private, who said they understood, none of them showed up now. Not one public defense, not one counter-comment. Their silence buzzed louder than any insult. By afternoon, the group chat with the family had once again lit up. This time, it wasn't passive-aggressive. It was direct. From Dad, "If you really loved us, you'd stop airing our business. You're not being a daughter, you're being a problem." A problem. Like I was mold on a wall. A leak under the sink. An inconvenience to be patched over and repainted. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I let out a laugh. Dry, hollow, as if it came from somewhere else in the room and not my own body. And then I reached for my journal, the one I hadn't touched in 3 days, and wrote the clearest line I'd ever penned. I wasn't being a daughter, I was being a donor. Not family, just function. That evening, as I was organizing receipts, Claire called. Her voice was hushed, like she wasn't supposed to be making the call, like the truth itself needed to be whispered. "And Selma, I need to tell you something. I should have said it earlier." I sat on the edge of my bed, the phone pressed to my ear like it might burn. "Your mom knew about the will, from the beginning. She told the family it was for the best, that you wouldn't understand." The room fell quiet. Even my heartbeat seemed to step aside. "She told everyone not to bring it up with you, said it would only cause trouble." I didn't ask for proof. I didn't doubt her. I didn't need to. Because I'd always suspected that Mom stood in the hallway between betrayal and protection, that she might have been manipulated. But this? She wasn't caught in the crossfire. She was holding the rifle. I thanked Claire. I don't remember the tone of my voice, but I do remember hanging up and sitting there, still, my hands folded in my lap like I was waiting for something, judgment perhaps, or maybe the sudden weightlessness that comes when a foundation completely collapses. But no such freedom arrived. Later that week, on my way home from work, I stopped by the Safeway to pick up a few things. The air outside was sharp with wind, snowflakes dancing sideways under the parking lot lights. That's when I saw her, Verlice, standing next to the flower stand, holding her phone like it was an award. She glanced up, saw me, and smirked. "So," she said, brushing snow from her shoulder, "how's your little pity parade going?" There was no audience here, no church members, no family friends. Just her, just me. She waited for me to snap, to defend, to make a scene. But I didn't. I stepped closer, met her eyes, and said calmly, "You may have their will, but I have their truth, and I'm about to make it public." Her smirk wavered, just a twitch, but enough for me. I walked inside without another glance. She didn't follow. I picked up a carton of milk, paid in cash, and stepped back into the cold. The wind stung my cheeks, but I didn't flinch. They had tried to bury me. But they'd forgotten something important. I'd grown roots in concrete. 2 mornings after seeing Verlice outside Safeway, I woke up before sunrise. The sky outside my bedroom window was a soft, indifferent gray. Still, the cold felt different that day, less numbing, more clarifying, like something in the air had shifted, Or maybe it was just me. At 7:12 a.m., while sipping from my chipped ceramic mug, the one I kept out of stubbornness, I saw the email notification on my phone. Subject: about the Elmore estate. It was from Thorne, not some anonymous attorney. Thorne had been with our family for years. He knew our birthdays, our messes, our milestones. He'd drafted the first version of my dad's will. Now he was writing to me, not as a family friend, but as a lawyer with concerns. And Selma, the message read, I have reason to believe the second version of your father's will contains significant discrepancies. Please review the attached documents at your earliest convenience. We need to speak. I opened the file, side-by-side scans. One dated a few months before Dad's health went downhill. My name clearly listed. A third split marked for a local animal shelter. Verlies still got the bulk, but I was there. Then the second document, recent, abrupt, and cold. Verlies's name stood alone. I didn't need to squint to catch the differences. The signature flowed differently. The ink was newer. The notarization stamp lacked its usual county watermark. And the date? It was the same weekend Dad was hospitalized with pneumonia and hallucinating. He couldn't even hold a spoon then, let alone a pen. I stared at the screen, then hit forward to my own attorney. No emotion, just action. Later that afternoon, I met Thorne at his office. A modest building downtown, all warm wood and old brass. He offered coffee. I declined. I can't officially advise you unless retained, he said. But off the record, this smells like coercion, or at the very least, a misrepresentation. Also, assigning full estate rights to one party without the spouse's co-signature violates Colorado joint property statutes. I folded my hands in my lap. So what happens next? He hesitated. An inquiry has already been opened. Someone sent documents anonymously to the State Legal Review Board. I assume it wasn't you. I didn't answer, because it didn't matter who'd opened the door. The truth has a way of walking in, uninvited, once there's a crack. That night, I lit one candle and sat at my desk. I didn't write a long post. No hashtags, no callouts, no fire, just a sentence. When they tried to erase me from paper, I wrote myself back in ink. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't enable comments. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. A message from Verlies. This is getting out of hand. Take it down. You're humiliating us. I read it once, then again, and then I placed the phone screen down on the table and kept the candle lit. I didn't feel the urge to reply. For the first time, their discomfort wasn't my responsibility. Their silence wasn't suffocating me. It was shielding them from the weight of everything I finally had the power to say. Because here's the thing no one tells you, silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's the final word. Closure isn't always a door slammed. Sometimes it's just you walking away. 3 weeks passed. The snow that once muffled the sidewalks had receded into slush, and even that had dried now, leaving behind faint salt stains on the curbs. The mornings no longer bit at my fingers. Instead, they brushed past them, offering something softer, like the world was thawing alongside me. I hadn't followed the court proceedings, not in real time, not with popcorn or commentary. I didn't need to sit through transcripts or refresh court dockets. I got a summary from Thorne, concise, professional, devoid of sentiment. Cadrian Elmore has been summoned for further inquiry regarding estate irregularities. Sorrel Elmore declined to offer a statement. No apology, no confession, no grand unraveling, just silence, which, oddly enough, felt louder than words. There's a kind of peace that comes when the noise finally dies down, even if it's just from people giving up the act. That morning, instead of diving into social feeds or the endless scroll of takes and hashtags, I grabbed my coat and walked 2 blocks to a small corner cafe I hadn't stepped into in years. The bell above the door still jingled like a memory. The owner, Marta, still wore her hair in that loose silver bun. She blinked, then lit up. "And Selma?" she said. "Where have you been hiding, girl?" I smiled. "Busy rediscovering air." She chuckled and poured me a black coffee without asking. "It's on the house," she said. "You always tip too much." I took my mug to a seat by the window and watched people drift by. Bundled couples, grocery bags, toddlers in puffer jackets. Life didn't wait for the dust to settle. It just kept moving. Maybe I could too. I opened my laptop, not to work, not to scroll, but to write. For the first time in a long time, I logged into my old blog, a relic from college days when I still believed my words might echo somewhere. I titled the post, "Some Truths Don't Need an Audience, Just Air to Breathe." And I wrote. I wrote about grief that doesn't come from death, about losing people who still breathe the same air but feel galaxies away, about how silence from the people you love can feel worse than shouting from strangers. I didn't name them, didn't point fingers or rehash old wounds. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about breath. My own. How I learned to exhale without waiting for someone else's approval. That afternoon, back at the office, I was organizing files when the front desk buzzed. "There's someone here to see you," my assistant said. "She didn't have an appointment." It was Mrs. Delaney. I hadn't seen her in years. Wrinkles had deepened around her eyes, but her posture was upright, determined. "You probably don't remember me," she said, her voice kind but weathered. "You helped me save my home. I never forgot." I did remember. A mess of paperwork, a last-minute refinance, a handwritten thank you card. But I hadn't expected her to walk in years later just to say this. "Thank you," she said again, "for being steady, for not letting me give up." She left after 10 minutes. Nothing dramatic. But when the door shut behind her, I felt something unfamiliar flood my chest. Not pride, not validation, just peace. That night, I got home to find a small cream envelope in my mailbox. No return address. My name was written in soft blue ink, careful cursive. Inside, one line. "You didn't deserve any of it. I'm sorry. Claire." No explanation, no defense, just those words. I didn't text her, didn't forward it to anyone. I folded the note and slid it into the back of my journal. Not to forgive, not to forget, just to witness it. Because sometimes acknowledgement matters more than apology. Later, I lit a candle and turned off every device I owned. No background noise, no screen glare, just me. I opened my journal and wrote one final entry. "I am not the forgotten daughter. I am the one who remembered myself." I closed the book slowly. The apartment was still. But for the first time, it wasn't empty. Because I wasn't either. I stood by the window, watching the city breathe in quiet pulses of light. My reflection stared back, tired, but whole. I wasn't waiting for anyone to show up for me anymore. I had. And that was enough. When your family tries to define your worth by how much you give, how quiet you stay, or how little you ask for, walk away with your dignity intact. The silence you once thought was strength might have just been fear dressed as loyalty. And when you finally speak, when you finally reclaim your voice, they won't know what to do with the sound. I didn't get justice in the way I first imagined. There was no dramatic apology, no overnight healing. But I got something better. Clarity, freedom, and self-respect. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. Peace doesn't always arrive with closure. It often comes from choosing yourself even when no one else does. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or made to feel like your existence was inconvenient, know this. You're not alone and you're not invisible. Not here. Not in this space. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been pushed aside by the people you trusted most? Did you stay silent or did you finally speak up? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story touched you, drop a 1 in the chat or tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. And if this video didn't resonate, I'd still love to hear why. What would you have done differently? What does healing look like to you? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you want more real stories that don't sugarcoat family, identity, or healing. Your voice matters here, and so does your experience. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember, they can try to erase you, but they can't erase your truth. And one day, that truth will speak louder than their silence ever did.